Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Dropping Gems with your girl, K-laine. I have a fabulous guest on today. Her name is Kathy. She's an author, an educator. She's a mom. She's a wife. And she's also the expert in homeschooling. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And let me not forget to mention she has a degree in psychology. How are you, Kathy?
I am awesome, and thank you so much for having me on. This is so much fun.
Thank you for engaging with us. Thank you for coming on and being my guest. We are so happy to have you, and I can't wait to dive into this conversation. We have so much to talk about today. So, like I mentioned, homeschool. Recently, during the pandemic, a lot of parents had to transition into virtual learning. But before virtual learning, there was homeschool. So how did you get into homeschooling? How did you decide that's something that you wanted to do for your family?
Actually, it came out of really being interested in child development. When my oldest, who's 17 now, was just a baby, I just tore through all the books, what to expect when you're expecting, what to expect your first year, all the developmental stuff. And then I was like, okay, what's next? How about learning, right? I'm pretty good on all the developmental stuff for this age. What's next? And, as you do, I popped over to Amazon and started reading reviews. And somebody in one of the reviews said, well, you should check out John Holt and John Taylor Gatto. And I'd never heard of them, but John Holt has done a huge series of books. He was the original homeschooler. He used to teach in public and then private schools, and then he got out of them and was like, no, people should teach their kids at home. And so I started in on that. And I was like, oh, that's a whole completely different concept. It never even occurred to me, but I loved the idea. So I went with it.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Like, most parents, they work a 9 to 5, their husbands or wives, but you were very fortunate to stay home with your children and learn to homeschool them. And it also takes, determination and effort on your part to be able to realize this is something that you want to do and go ahead and do your research so you're able to effectively teach your child, through homeschooling. So I think that's great. I think that is great. So since you're the expert, how or what advice would you give a parent or someone that wants to transition into homeschooling?
Well, the first thing that I've really seen to be useful is called deschooling, which is about taking a break from just the idea of school and the structure of school, because when you're homeschooling, you don't have to do that. And a lot of people feel like they have to recreate school at home, and that's one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen and a lot of other homeschoolers have seen, because that's just a huge recipe for burnout. If you're going to create school at home, why not just send them to school? If you want to keep them home, you can create whatever you want and tailor the education to each individual kid even. It's not like all of my kids are the same.
Right. All kids have their own personality, that's for sure. And they learn different and they interact with the parent in a different way. And they also all have different needs. I'm really big on learning a child. Just because I know, or the way I grew up, or how my parents communicated with me may not be effective when I am dealing with, a student or, my younger cousins or my niece. That may not be the most effective way to deal with them because they are different. They have their own personality. They're not like me. Some of them are very quiet. Like I have one cousin, he's super quiet. He's in the computers, but he's very quiet. But I have to interact with him on one-on-one. Like if it's not if we're all in a group and we're all hanging out, I know I have to, when I talk to him, I can't say it in a group, say, all you guys, we're going to do this. I have to tell him, hey, do you want to go do this? You want to go to the trampoline park with us? How are you today? It's always on a personal level with him. I can't just say a group, how are you guys doing today? And then he probably won't answer. He probably won't engage, but I know I have to talk to him on a personal level. So I'm so big on learning a child's personality to be able to teach them geared to their needs.
Exactly.
So that's awesome that you did that, and that's how you teach. So that's great. So tell me a little bit more about structure. So you said that you don't recreate school. Don't recreate, school when you're homeschooling. So is there a set structure for homeschooling as far as, okay, well, we take some classes online, we have outdoor time, we have social time, like how does that all tie in?
It is so family to family and even kid to kid. And year to year, right? Our structure has changed over time as the kids have gotten older. And then different things work for different families and for different people. Some families are just totally unstructured and they thrive that way, right? And they're like, oh, you want to work on this today? Great. We'll go to the park tomorrow, right? And other people actually really do much better with a set structure. They prefer to work with, say, a curriculum, or just to have a time structure to say, we're always going to work on something homeschool from this time to this time, and then we're going to have lunch, and then we're going to go out to the park. That's one of the wonders really of homeschooling, is to be able to do what works for you. And of course, some parents work and they end up doing homeschooling in the evenings after they get home from work.
That's interesting to breaking the total structure of school in the morning, in the afternoon, but now we have evening classes for our children. Wow, that's interesting. So I have a question for you. So this is always interesting to me, about homeschooling. How do you come up with a curriculum, or how do you choose? Because I'm sure that you guys probably maybe not create all of the curriculum, but there's probably curriculum out there designed for homeschooling. How do you choose the right curriculum for homeschooling that kind of translates to the real world? Does that make sense? So there's a structure in normal school that's supposed to be able to translate to real life, or you're supposed to be able to use all the tools as an adult and in the work field, or as an entrepreneur, business owner. So how do you guys, supposedly that's how school works. I have my biases in some things as well, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So how do you
I'm going to hop in there to say, how many things have you learned since you've been out of school that you were like, wait, why didn't I learn that?
Absolutely. I've learned tons of real life things that I did not learn in school.
There's always going to be trade-offs. Unless you're exactly sticking with what they're teaching in school, you're not going to learn the same things. And you're going to miss something. But when you're in school, you're going to miss other things, right? And so the important thing is to teach the kids to love learning and to know that they can teach themselves. That's one of the things that I don't like about the structure of school, is that it's set up so that learning comes from on high, right? If the teacher hasn't told you about it, or you haven't learned it in your textbook, then you're not supposed to learn it.
Right. Okay. I see.
And so if the best tools that we can give the next generation is that they can learn themselves. They can go on YouTube, they can read books, they can go to the library, they can ask people. Anything that they want to learn is out there. And they have the capability of learning it.
I love that. I love that you say that. I love that you say that, because as a child, or, you know, growing up in school, I thought that that's what school was for, just to teach you, once you learn, this is how life is. But as I became a young adult and I've been, you know, gotten older, and I'm like, definitely I can teach myself. There's definitely things I can learn. Like, I didn't know that in school. I didn't know about saving money in my savings account, or how that the percentage amount that you need to save to make it as an adult in the world, or for retirement, or anything like that. I know that's beyond, you know, learning in school, you know, regular school, but
why is it? Why should it?
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, why is it?
Total life skills that we should be teaching.
Absolutely. And I definitely, I love that you say that. Like, that is so like encouraging, that I just feel like I need to get that out to people, because even realizing as an adult, there's so many things that, you know, I do research now because I want to know about, and I teach myself to do it. Like, okay, so for instance, we're just gonna have this little rabbit hole we're gonna go down real quick. So for recently, my birthday's coming up, and my parents are they're gonna have they're making a breakfast, which is like, it's a breakfast brunch type of thing to celebrate my birthday, because normally it's my mom's tradition that she's always makes my brother and I dinner for our birthday. So that's always a tradition, no matter, we can be out of town. And I was in New York last year for my birthday, and they had dinner for me when I was away, because it's the tradition. So this coming Saturday, the 22nd, I think it's 22nd, they're having a breakfast. I chose a breakfast instead of dinner. I was like, let's just have a brunch, you know, type of thing. And I wanted to give away a thank you gift to people. But I was like, I just kind of want it to be special. I kind of want it to be like, you know, special. So what I did was, like, I wanted to get these super cool tumblers, and I want to put a message on the tumblers, but I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So long story short, I YouTubed it, and guess what? It's done, and it's fabulous, and it's so super cool, and I'm just so excited, and I'm so happy about the project and everything. But it's just the fact that it was out there, and I knew that just because it wasn't knowledge stuck in my head, that it was impossible, but it was possible. So I love that you said that. And wow, it just, I don't know, it just gives me this energy and wants to tell everybody about it. So,
and that's a great illustration of the point right there.
Yes.
That you were like, I'll go find out. And you did.
And I feel like we need to teach our children more that way. Like, just go look for it, you know, just go look for it. Or ask a question, say, hey, what is this about? And then adults knowing that this is a form of learning for them, we can say, hey, why don't you check YouTube? Go to the library. There's books. We can get you books off Amazon, because depending on where you live, you can get the books in hours from Amazon, or different things from Amazon. Depending where you live, it's like same day. So yeah, that's, you know, I don't want to go into a larger rabbit hole on that, but I definitely love that. That just makes me so excited. So is there any specific children that you like to teach? Like, is it like you like to teach older children, or developmentally children, or like, is there any specific children?
It really depends. You know, I just, they're so interesting at all their different ages. My kids right now are 17, 14, and 9. So I've got a big range in there. You know, and with my oldest, I'm working on composition stuff. My middle boy is into a lot of history things. So we actually watch a lot of history stuff together.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And boy, I tell you, some of the stuff that we did not learn in school. We just watched a whole series on. This was a really good extra credits is the YouTube channel, and they do a history series.
Oh wow, I'm gonna
and
check it out.
they did a great series for Black History Month, and one of them was on redlining. I'm like, why didn't I learn this in school? I mean, it's vital information, right? And anyway. But that's getting off the topic.
And it's okay. It's definitely it's okay. The more you teach, the more we learn.
And then our youngest, his brain is so different from either of the other two, and they're different from each other. But he has always loved engineering. He's going to be some kind of builder, maker, engineer.
Wow.
When he was kindergarten age. There's a little electronics kit called snap circuits where they're little batteries and then you snap things together and you can make stuff. But he wanted to go beyond that. So he had me buy him an electronic breadboard with little wires that you stick in. And he cobbled them together and made himself a radio with an old speaker that he'd taken out of something else. And I'm just like,
awesome.
What is that sound? And I went in the other room. I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh, I just made a radio, Mom. I wish I'd gotten a picture of it before he took it apart, because I was just like, okay, what else can we do to support you in this?
Wow, that's awesome. I love kids that, right away, because they all have gifts and talents, but right away show their creativity and like how their brain, what's going on the inside, they are able to produce it on the outside, because you never know what a child's thinking. So I like that I can see and say, hey, we need to, get behind that. We need to, nurture that. We need to grow that. I think that's so awesome. He's such a cool kid. I bet he's so cool. I bet you all your kids are super cool. I'm not going to discriminate, but my favorite is younger kids. I love younger kids, maybe until they get to maybe 12. I can deal with them until they get to 12, and then I feel like I have to like get super serious with them after 12 and beyond and say, hey, you need to start thinking about real life things now. Like you have to start being responsible more. You have responsible for different things. You have to think about where you want to go to college. You're like, I'm 12. I know this is the time. You should have already been thinking about this before, but this is the time. And so then I turn into the unfun auntie then. So not so fun aunties then, when I'm like, these are the things you need to start thinking about. Okay, we can't go have ice cream. We can talk about it over ice cream, but we need to talk about it.
One of the things that I've really enjoyed about homeschooling, and our particular way of it, because, each family is unique, is that we try very much to be respectful of the kids and treat them as, they're full human beings with their own ideas, and we can't just say this is how it's going to be. Right. Because then you get a lot of resistance.
Absolutely, for sure.
And so, everybody's like, oh, teenagers. I'm like, I'm not really having that reaction. I'm like, my guys are going to be leaving home soon. And I like them. And we hang out together and we watch all these cool videos. And, we have good times together. We do stuff as a family. And it's so much fun. And a lot of the other homeschoolers that I know are also, the ones who are especially in that kind of same mindset. They're telling me the same stuff with their kids. They're just, there's not the kind of friction that you often see where you have to force your kid to do the school from work, because the work from school.
Wow, that's very interesting.
That's what school dictates, right? Wow,
that's interesting. Off camera, I would like to know more about that, because I feel like that's a struggle. A lot of parents today, like they are having to, force their children. Hey, you need to get good grades. You need to be doing your homework. Why aren't you doing your homework? Why don't you want to go to school? Why don't you want to get up for virtual learning? What's the issue here? And I feel like a lot of parents are struggling with that. So maybe we can have a segment too, and we can discuss some things like that.
Well, I would definitely recommend the book by Alfie Kohn, Kohn, called Unconditional Parenting.
I see. All right. You guys heard that. Go check out that book. So I know you mentioned to me previously about neurodiverse kids. So can you tell me a little bit about that and how, tell me a little bit about that and, tell me about, homeschooling, why you love homeschooling neurodiverse kids.
All right. Well, all three of my kids are not what, who would slot into school, right? There's really a pretty narrow band of people who do well in school and fit that style of learning. Howard Gardner's book on multiple intelligences really goes into that a lot. But there are really only 2 or 3 kinds of intelligences that work well with school. But there are 8 main ones, and then I think he's gone on to something like 17 different kinds of intelligences. And people whose main intelligences aren't the ones that do well in school, they don't do so well with school. That's not their main way of learning.
Wow.
And so neurodiversity really encompasses everything from gifted and talented to any kind of disability that people are dealing with that doesn't fit kind of the mainstream image of a typical kid, right? Except that who's a typical kid? None of them are really typical. Like my oldest could read, but he didn't read well for a really long time. And if he'd been in school, he would have been behind, and they would have given him remedial reading lessons, which are boring as all get out. They would have forced him to read, and he would have hated it.
Right. Correct.
I read out loud to them every night. I still do, actually. I'm sharing some of my favorite big people books now with the big kids. And I let him read graphic novels and comics. He read every single Garfield comic book there was in the library. We found graphic novels of Macbeth. There's so much out there. It's just amazing. And I was just like, we checked to make sure that he didn't have a physical disability.
I see. Okay.
He didn't have dyslexia. He didn't have any kind of eye issues that would keep him from reading. And he was reading. He just never did chapter books. I'm like, all right. I kept getting advice that it would come. And as long as there wasn't anything actually wrong with him, then I was able to just let him be. And he was 11. And we got a new Harry Potter book for Christmas. He's like, I think I want to reread the old ones. And he picked up the first one and he read them straight through, the first 5 books in 2 weeks. And then he was reading and he was ready. Whereas my second son was reading at age 3. He taught himself to read and he was above his brother's reading level by age 4.
Wow.
And the trick with him was to find stuff that was at his reading level that he was interested in, because he was reading at a middle school level in 2nd grade. And a lot of the stuff that's written at that age level is not interesting to a 2nd grader.
Absolutely not. Not if he's already reading beyond a 2nd grade level. Wow.
So, and then of course, my third guy is all about engineering, and kindergarten isn't set up to deal with an engineer. Right. So there's so much diversity out there, brain diversity as well as temperament. And one of the things that is really important to me is destigmatizing difference. In school, it's really important not to be different.
Right.
There's the teacher culture, but there's also a kid culture to not be different, to not be too smart, to not be not smart enough.
Right. Wow.
To not be too weird. Mm-hmm. Right. And I really don't think that that's healthy. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with this book that I've got coming out, Why I Love Homeschooling Neurodiverse Kids, is to show that homeschooling is awesome for people who are homeschooling kids who are anywhere on the spectrum of neurodiversity or not. I mean, anywhere along there, right? And that, gosh, how do I want to say that? It's like a lot of people won't even talk about their kids having problems because it's so not normal.
Yes, that's so accurate. That is so accurate.
And then everybody feels alone.
Notice. Yes.
Right? Everybody feels alone because nobody's talking about it. I mentioned something to my son's piano teacher, and she said, "Oh yeah, and we're doing therapy for so and so." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that." Right? And then I sent her a little, "Oh, hey, you know, what are you doing? My kids really enjoyed going to this place." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that your kids had stuff." Right? And it was another area of bonding. Right.
Yeah, and it's an area of learning, helping one another, help our children, because our children are our future, and we always want the best for our children. So if we feel alone, we don't even know all of the resources that are at hand for us to, you know, help our children or help us understand the things or the disabilities or the abilities, not even just disabilities, abilities of our children, because most of our children are pretty smart most of the time. Like in some area, they excel. So
Absolutely.
I think not being alone, being able to share that with other parents is, I think we need more of that. I think we, like you said, I think we need to erase the stigma.
Yep. And interestingly, like last year, I wrote a book with my friend Bryn, Why I Love Homeschooling, which was the first in the series. And it's all a book of essays by a whole bunch of different homeschoolers and like their take on homeschooling. And when we finished that, I thought, you know, I really need to do one on neurodiversity because people didn't really talk about that in the first book. And I thought, well, I bet we've got a bunch of neurodiverse kids in there.
Absolutely.
You know, why not? And and so I approached my friend to see if she would be up for editing another book because it's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, my son has problems. Like I didn't know the whole time that we'd been working on the book together that her son had things that he was dealing with, and she may not have known about mine, right? Because there's that whole not talking about things.
Yes, definitely.
And so that's why the new one, which is coming up, is a whole bunch of parents talking about the benefits that they've found for homeschooling a wide variety of kids, everything from, you know, gifted and talented to one of our parents had just a severely disabled child who, you know, is never going to be able to live out of the home.
Okay. Yeah.
And yet they were able to use the homeschooling experience to teach her to function.
Wow.
Right, on a higher level. It wasn't about learning to take tests because that was just never going to happen. But it was about learning to deal with people and interact with people and self-care.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's a huge range of people, and I tell you, I learned so much myself reading the book and all the different essays. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So, what is your favorite quote from one of your books?
Let's see. I think Penelope Trunk is my favorite. Oh God, I have a lot of them. Penelope Trunk is a big homeschool blogger, and so people in the homeschool community will definitely know her. She says, "Don't tell me boring is an acceptable, expected part of adult life. No adults want to be bored. So why tell kids they need to learn to accept being bored?"
Wow. That's a good quote. I like that one. I like that one because I know I like to have fun.
And there's more. She says, "Kids don't need to learn to be bored. Kids need to learn to identify what they want so much that they'd be willing to be bored to get it."
Wow.
Because sometimes in life, we adults do things that bore us, but it's because we're working towards something else that we want.
Absolutely. I love that because I know I do boring stuff like study because I'm working towards something greater that, you know, that I aspire to do and that I'm passionate about. So that quote makes sense. And the funny thing about it is sometimes you never learn that until you become an adult. Wow. Yep. I love that quote. So, like I mentioned at the top of the show, she's an author. Can you run through your published books for us? Like, give us the titles and, where we can find those books.
So the first one that I wrote was Homeschoolers Are Not Hermits. And of course, now in the time of COVID, we've become a lot more hermits than we used to be. And that one was kind of a brain dump, right? I was like, every time I went on Facebook and somebody said, can you help me with this? I would write a paragraph and then I'd be like, there's so much more. Right. I could just tell you everything, right? And I finally said, why don't I just do that? Why don't I just put it all down? One of the things that I didn't manage to squeeze into there was our travel, because we love to do travel. We're a big travel family. And so I wrote another one called Road Schooling, How to Drive Cross Country Without Driving Your Family Up the Wall.
Wow.
I have a quick start guide for people who just want to get into homeschooling quickly and don't want to read everything that I have to say on my big brain dump. And then I've got Why I Love Homeschooling, which is a compilation of writings by 24 different parents about what the joys and challenges of their homeschooling life. And then right now I'm working on the Why I Love Homeschooling Neurodiverse Kids. You can find my books on Amazon. I do have an author page there that will pull those all up if you're interested. But it's also easy to just go to my website based on my first book, Homeschoolers Are Not Hermits. It is homeschoolersnothermits.com. And then if you just add a /books on there, that'll take you to all my books, but there's also a link too, so you could just go straight to the page as well. And I do have a Facebook group, Homeschoolers Are Not Hermits, if you just look that up. So I'm easy to find. So I will say thank you so much for having me on. It's been lots of fun. I could talk about this forever, obviously. If you have more questions that you want for me, I'm happy to come on another time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy, for coming on. Like, you dropped so many gems on us today. It was so amazing to have you on my show. Like, man, I just don't want to end the conversation. Where can they find you? Do you have any social media sites? Are you on social media? Where can they find you if they have questions? They want to know your website. They want to know more about your books, or if they just want to interact with you.
So I do have a Facebook group page, and just look up Homeschoolers Are Not Hermits on Facebook. That's easy. And then my website, homeschoolersnothermits.com, is also a good way to get a hold of me.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. And you guys need to go follow Kathy. You need to go check out her books. She is an amazing author, mother, wife. I love having her. So you guys know what to do. You can go follow me at K-laine813 on all social media sites. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you won't miss any of Dropping Gems with K-laine. Thank you guys. Love you. Bye.
Bye.